Hey guys, how the hell are you? Today we are going to do a new unbiased gear review on this. The ENGL E656 Steve Morse Signature 100. So first, let's go over some specs of this head. So this is a 100 watt beast that is powered by 4 EL34 power amp tubes, as well as 4 ECC83 or 12AX7 preamp tubes. We have 3 channels on this thing. We have channel 1, which is more of a clean channel, channel 2, more of a crunch and sort of slightly lower high gain, and then a lead channel, channel 3, that has a lot more knobs and controls than the other channels. Channel 1's controls, we've got gain 1, bass, middle, treble, and volume 1. Channel 2, we have gain 2, bass, middle, treble, and volume 2. We have channel 3 now. Here's where it gets crazy. We've got gain 3, we've got bass, we've got low mid 1, low mid 2, and a switch that goes between them. We have high mid 1 and high mid 2 and a switch that goes between them. The difference between the two switches, the blue and the red, there's a sort of different frequency range that each of those mid controls covers. One of them is much wider and much fuller. One of them is much more precise and a lot thinner. We also have a treble control here, low volume and high volume. We have a master A and a master B, so if you want adjustments in overall master volume for the whole unit, you've got that, foot switchable and ready. Presence knob and a depth punch switch. All of the channels are switchable from the front, but can also be accessed using an optional foot switch. Several of them are available for this unit. These little push buttons switch between the different channels. So as you can see, you can still use this even without the foot switch. We also have different effects loops that can be switched using this right here. Right copy, this little blinking light right here. Several of these channels and controls and knobs are MIDI assignable. So you can actually assign different controls, different settings to different MIDI points. You also have an onboard noise gate as well, and the threshold control is located on the back. And in addition to that, there's also a tone switch which operates globally. It affects each of the 3 channels, but it affects each of the 3 channels differently. The clean channel, channel 1, it acts as kind of a typical bright switch. The second channel, the sort of lower high gain channel, it acts as a mid scoop switch. So when you have it disengaged, you have a much fuller sounding mid-range, but if you want to make this thing sound fucking awesome for thrash and death metal riffage, you just hit that little tone button for channel 2 and it cuts it down so that it's a scooped mid sound. For channel 3, it does not scoop the mids. What it does is it changes the mid-range voicing a bit. So you basically have not only the low and high mid, you can switch between the different low mids and the different high mids. But hitting that tone switch also gives you an altogether different mid-range structure that you can also play around with, both of the low mids, both of the high mids. All in all, it makes especially channel 3 an extremely versatile high gain channel. On the back of the head, to start off with, we have a ton of speaker outs. We have a 16 ohm, we have 2 8 ohms, and 2 4 ohms. But it also tells you how the ohmage gets split. So if you're running more than one speaker cabinet, it tells you how to hook it up properly without potentially causing a load issue with the head. We also have a pre-output and a line out, so that if you wanted to slave this thing out to another power amp, you could, or if you wanted to run it directly into your board and use an impulse response, you can do that as well. 2 different switchable effects loops with a send and return and a line balance on each. We also have the threshold level for the noise gate. We have various different foot switch controls, MIDI in and out, MIDI controller, etc. for all the various different foot switches that you can buy for this thing. Several of them are available through ENGL. And then, of course, there's also finally a ground switch. So without any more talk and wasting time, let's just get right on into the tone demo. So as is always the case for the tone demo of this head, we are going to be utilizing my Framus television model, which is loaded with Seymour Duncan Alnico 2 Pros for those warm lows and those crisp, clean highs. You know what we've got to do, because if we don't do it, there's going to be people bitching in the comment section. So let's do this clean demo. I don't want to do it. A lot of you don't want me to do it. We're going to do it anyway. All the knobs set to noon. As you can hear, the tone control acts as a brightness switch on channel number 1. Plenty of gain actually on tap there. Just for gits and shiggles, let's hit high gain and see what happens. Pretty cool. So even though it's channel 1, technically the clean channel, there is a lot of gain that is on tap here. If I was looking for a clean sound, I gotta be honest, that would be the kind of tone I would be looking for right there. Something extremely, extremely chimey, but with just a little hint of breakup. Not bad, but that's not why we're here. So that's just with the knobs set all the way noon. We're going to pump up the volume on this channel just a little bit here. lot of gain there. Definitely more saturation with that high gain switch. Also, it should be noted right now, this has the mid scooped out because of that tone button. Turn that off. And instantly, before I even play another note, you can definitely hear it gets a little bit more of that mid-range honk to it. All controls set to 6, getting some pretty kind of standard fare high gain tones, not too shabby at all. Scoop the mids. That is definitely more to my liking. Let's dial that back a little bit more. Let's pump up the treble a little bit. Really liking that a lot. Let's mess with the presence a little bit more. I'm really digging that. I've got the treble maxed out. The treble is dimed. The presence I've brought back a little bit. And having the mid scooped both times. The mid is brought down a little bit here with the mid control being just below 4 and the tone switch being engaged, which on channel 2 scoops the mids. I'm really kind of digging this. Kind of a really kick-ass classic metal tone there. With the depth at noon, that's what cranking the bass does on this. Let's, just for gits and shiggles, dime both. Still not really losing complete control of the low end there. I kind of like that a lot. So one thing I definitely was made aware of when I was recording the demo song for this video, you have to be very aware of where you've got the depth and the bass for the channels that you're using, because when you go to record, especially if you're multi-tracking, low end plus low end plus low end plus low end, you're going to get something big and boomy and not at all enjoyable to listen to. So you need to be making sure that when you go back to double track and quad track, whatever you like to do, it's okay to dial back the low end on this because you still get a good amount of tight, defined chunkus, which is awesome. But let's go to the brutes. So, before anyone says, oh, I know this is a typical angle, it's probably got 4 channels, right? No, this entire bottom portion right here is all channel 3. There's a lot of knobs here, a lot of tinkering we can do, a lot of stuff we can mess with. Even more low end on tap there. And back. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Alright, so what we've got going on with the mid-range on this, because as you guys can see, there's 4 mid controls. There's 2 for high mid and there's 2 for low mid. There's also a switch in between them that goes between the different high mids and between the different low mids. The ones with the blue lights have a certain Q sort of frequency range to them, and the ones with the red light have a different frequency range between them. One is substantially thinner, the other one is substantially wider. So that if you want to really get in there and really fine-tune and tailor your sound with the mid-range especially so that it sits perfectly in the mix, you can absolutely do that. And even just at noon, as you can hear, that makes a world of difference. And on channel 3, this tone switch doesn't act as a mid scoop, doesn't act as a brightness switch. It acts as yet another way of changing the overall sound of that mid-range. So this acts as sort of like a mid-range character switch. Hit it. me, that's a little bit too much gain, to be honest with you. Because we have to give it the black metal test. And it passes. Sounds really, really awesome. So, in the low mid, I tend to find myself preferring the red light one. To me, I feel like it just makes the low mids a little bit more punchy and more defined. Especially when you're scooping them out, like I'm kind of doing here. I've kind of got it dialed back ever so slightly. Which will work wonders when I go back to record some stuff. Like, that is creating a nice little pocket that a bass guitar can sit in the mix. I'll be honest with you, like for the high mid, I kind of prefer this one right here because it's a little fuller. And in the high mids, I'm kind of really digging having a little bit extra oomph in the high mid section up there. But remember what I was referring to earlier, you want to keep your eye on the depth punch knob and the bass of whatever channel you're using, because if you go to record and you're multi-tracking, that is going to be like way too much. Like where it's at right now, this is way too much when I was recording earlier. So having the depth punch brought up a little bit is fine, but let's bring back the bass. That's a little bit too much. Like right here, this is kind of a perfect little tone setting that I found when I was recording the demo song. Because everything just tended to sit really nicely, and you weren't getting like a super boomy low end out of it. The high end wasn't super like shrill or anything. Bringing back the gain a little bit though. Just for a little bit more clarity. This thing is sounding pretty awesome at this setting. So overall, my final thought on this head, this was substantially better than I thought it would be. Here's the thing, I love ENGL amps, I really do. I especially love the Savage 120 for instance. I love the Artist Edition, I love the Fireball, I love the Extreme Aggression, which by the way, I would really love for that to be reissued if anyone is watching this video. But this was something that, at least appearance-wise, it really seemed to me like this was going to be something that was much more in line with an Invader. And the Invader is one of the few ENGL amps that I did not necessarily gel with. I really didn't like the way the mid-range sounded on that amp, and it just didn't suit my playing at all. So I was a little bit nervous going into this and checking out how this amp sounded because I didn't know if it would necessarily do what I wanted it to do. Lo and behold, plugging into this thing, it sounded ridiculous with barely any knob tweakage. But then once I started getting into the nooks and crannies, figuring out what really works, what really doesn't, how to get various different tones on this. Do I want a big, boomy, sort of raw death metal thing? Do I want something more pristine and cutting edge? Do I want a ridiculous thrash metal or power metal tone? It kind of did it all with just tweaking the knobs and pushing in a few buttons here or there. Some people will take a look at the different options, the different buttons, the different tonal variations. The fact that there's 4 fucking mid controls for channel 3, and they'll be like, what the hell? Like, this is extremely, extremely intimidating. But I promise you, it's one of those things where even though there's tons of options, if you just dip your toe in, get your feet wet, all of a sudden these kick-ass tones will just start leaping out of this thing, and you will have an incredible metal tone. Nay, not an incredible tone, you'll have a ton of incredible metal tones. Like, I was just super surprised with this thing. If you want a super cutting mid-range for solo work, you've got that on tap. If you wanted something that was seriously scooped so that you could get fucking low down and dirty with the riffage, you've got that too. This thing really, really did so much. It also had a pristine clean channel, although not necessarily my thing. But when you pump up the gain on that clean channel and you get the high gain out of that clean channel, it even has an incredible AC/DC-ish crunch coming out of that thing. This sounds fucking legit. So I really don't have anything bad to say about this thing. I mean, I would love to be able to get my favorite tones out of this just maybe in one standalone unit with one channel, because 3 channels and all these different switches don't necessarily suit me as a player. But if you're the type of person that likes to dig in, likes to find the sweet spot amongst a ton of different controls and knobs and settings, this is an incredible amp, especially for a metal player. You're going to have a lot of fun with this thing, just like I did. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, like this video, subscribe to this channel. There's tons more metal guitar-oriented content to come. And remember, please, take what you do seriously. Do not take yourself too seriously.